Rachel Eliza Griffiths will be doing a reading from one of her, from either her last release or her forthcoming release.
I'm sorry.
Rachel has also contributed photographs to our themed issue on silences. I will scroll through a few of the images. We have one on the screen at present.
So I'm going to share two poems very briefly, and I would like also to read just the very last, I think, 3 or 4 lines from James Baldwin's Nothing's Personal. A poem for the autopsy photograph of Che Guevara. I am the silence around the dead man's swelling. I breathe until fear shrivels skin. I look into open eyes for infinity. I pull an icon out of his clear chest and hold it up in rain light. I am the way the men feel surrounding his bones. I have their hope, the gun one of them lifts. I will wait and honor one of these mornings when each monochrome chest turns starboard for silence, when the gun and the bone fall out of love. And then the second poem I'd like to read is called Recurrence. Next to the throne where we are waiting for you to judge, I sit you in a hardback chair. I don't tie you to its broken arms. I don't offer you torture, confession, freedom. You could only give me what you gave the scholars, a chamber of vapors named history. I give you water. You do not see my blood in it. I give you bread the rest of us cannot eat because we gave our bellies to red crows. I swivel a tambourine like a knife through air. We nod in time to airless music. Sometimes I wish it were blue. I watch the scale of love tilt. I touch your hips and you like that. You like my bones to want you. In American solo, you know the hymn and sing it with your lips cold. Below, we watch cities unfurl their flags and you don't blink when the children fall out like mice. I polish you with tar. I shine you, my beloved country. I give you fruit after checking each seed for poison. Here is a book about war, I say, and you smile, taking it from my bloody hands. In the government of dreams, you are behind on your paperwork, so you are like democracy. You offer me the throne. We are waiting for the servants to rinse the ghost from where you last sat. I have been waiting here for 200 years by your side, even when you left me for another woman. The smell of my singed skin is in the sky and the rose of your harvest. I wait for your orders, mushroom, nimbus, tornado, fire. I hold a sterling tray of faces, waiting for you to make up your mind.
Okay, I'm going to read from my collection, just the beginning of this one story. It's called All the Sex is West. Inez Suarez didn't have a man, as men who met her liked to ask, or occasionally people at the library where she'd worked since high school, mostly reshelving because she didn't have a degree. Her responses to the men varied from the suspicious, "You think you can be my man?" to the coy, "Who wants to know?" The more honest answer, which she sometimes allowed herself to give to the women at the library, particularly the unattached ones, was something like, "A man? Do they come in faithful?" Because for every time she thought she'd had one, she was proven wrong. Sometimes she felt she'd wiggled her way into their hearts, maneuvering little by little till she wedged herself firmly inside, unshakable. Sometimes the guys were the ones who ran into her arms, grabbing hold hard, begging. Even those always ended up backing away, smiling, their hands over their heads, later, baby. No, what Inez Suarez had was Los Angeles, and if you had that, men were everywhere. There, like rivers and caves and mountains were there. They were places to go for coolness, for heat, for pleasure, and for business. They were places to visit, to always get back into her car and come back from. Inez had never been further south than Danny and TJ, and no further east than Henry and Las Vegas. She'd once got as far north as Gary and Santa Barbara. She'd taken several excursions to Rick in Newport Beach, where she fell asleep to the lapping of the waves just beyond his bedroom window. None of the guys lasted for very long. It was the Pacific she came up against again and again, at once stopping her in her tracks and inviting her with its fluid blue swell to leave her car, her shoes, to be submerged. It was never a perfect invitation, tinged by signs of pollution and cold, but there was no such thing as a perfect invitation. She'd been around enough to know that. Saturday night, South El Monte, California. The bodies of mosquitoes floated in Inez Suarez's swimming pool as she walked along the red brick patio, past the hanging plants and shovels with potting soil left out, to her car in the driveway, newly washed at the hand car wash on Peck Road on a day that had been bright blue hot. It was dark now, but the wrought iron chairs and table were still warm to the touch, like the sun had burned itself inside. Her mother yelled again, louder this time. She was polite and shy with Inez's friends, speaking in the little English she knew, but she always spoke to Inez in Tagalog. She always screamed in Tagalog. No, I won't be late. Inez didn't need to raise her voice. Her mother could pick up her slightest vocal sound. Mrs. Suarez yelled again about vacuuming before the family came, and Inez quickened her pace, her small heels click-clacking on the bricks, and pressed the unlock button on her keychain to save time. She and Andy had run out of her house like this countless times before, fleeing like it was the Temple of Doom, and her mother an angry, Pierce native who was not sophisticated, who knew nothing of their conquests for glory, discovery, and $2 Corona specials. Her pocket felt flat, and she almost turned around to retrieve her phone, left for charging in the bathroom, but she could not endanger the mission. She briefly checked herself in the rearview mirror, moving her bangs over the small bandage on her forehead. Then she pulled out of the driveway, not bothering to close the gate after her, which would earn her more yelling when she got home. Once on Santa Anita, she headed toward the freeway, making a quick stop for a new pack of cigarettes at the Shell station on the corner, and accelerated onto the 60 westbound. It wasn't until she got to that fork of 3 freeways, sailing right down the middle onto the 101, that she lit a cigarette, inhaled, and blew.
Hi, I'll be reading an excerpt from my novel Manicomio. In the summer of your birth, a huracan ripped through the Antilles and into the heart of the island. Hungry hurricane fingers tearing open the island's soft flesh, boring into the wet earth to claw at its roots, upturning centuries-old ceiba and guaragao trees. Woven into that mangled mess of tree limbs were the bodies of the very old tethered to the too young. Ropes still wound around their waist so they would not be separated in the storm. Bodies piled on top of bodies, face to face, their mouths gaping open as if in the middle of a secret one has yet to tell. Even El Rio Loíza woke from its sleeping spring stillness and rose through the swamps, red river clay claiming the cane, tobacco, banana groves, pulling our dead out to sea. Aguántate, Xiomara, Doña Juta yelled. Don't let go of the rope. I could barely hear her over the roar of the wind, with the rain falling like stones and crushing the thatched roofs around us and Doña Juta's bohío of magic. Arms stretched overhead, I fought to keep my grip on the twisting rope as it flayed the palms of my hands. No puedo, I can't. My eyes grew heavy as the pain in my belly swelled. My body broke open. Blood trailed into the rush of rain. Slowly, the rope began slipping from my hands, and my heart, beating like 1,000 hooves, nearly muffled the crash of thunder. And then I heard him, your father, my Emilio, his voice soft, brushing against the back of my neck as if he were alive again. Xiomara, mi negrecita, listen. From somewhere, I heard chanting as my body began to give itself to the earth, first no louder than a whisper, then rising over the wind, over the screech of zinc roofs whipping through tree tops, over the screaming bodies of our townsfolk tossed like rag dolls in the wind. Oya, warrior of the wind, keeper of the storm, protect this child born of rain. Doña Juta placed herself between my legs. Oya, warrior of the wind, keeper of the storm, protect this child born of rain. Then it was inside me, rising through the soles of my feet, pulling, tugging at my matriz. Oya, warrior of the wind, keeper of the storm, protect this child born of rain. My sex tore, and something smooth, slick like a river stone was pulled from inside me. Then your cry bellowing above the rain. Doña Juta screamed, a vivir y a morir para vivir otra vez. She separated you from my body with her teeth. The last thing I remembered were her shaking hands placing you against my breast. When I woke in the morning of that death, my body burned as if lightning had split me in two. The end of the rope that tied Doña Juta and I together was frayed, and she was gone. Juta, I whispered. Juta, I strained to speak. Then I felt in the iciness of my bones that she had left this place. That was her last act of magic, delivering you to me. And how perfect you came, with your father's eyes like obsidian glistening as if you were crying always. Daughter of the wind, you were a fierce warrior, and I called you Tempestad. The sudden storm stilled just as quickly as it came, the silence so loud you could hear the earth settle into itself like un viejo, tired bones creaking, the ground gurgling with the blood of those whose lives were swallowed. I walked through the ruins of the town, bohío after bohío, hut after hut, toppled and pressed into grama made thick like stew with the muddied waters of the Sierra and the carcasses of pigs, horses, townsfolk who still wore the aceveches Doña Juta fashioned in the darkness of a new moon. Their bodies were now scattered like playthings, as if a child scooped up muñecas only to toss them aside, hungry for the next game. But this was no child, this was Oya, goddess of Tempest, and everywhere voices were heard searching. Have you seen my boy, my family? They were tied to this tree, Mami, Papi. Then the groups of Americans swarming in from La Cruz Roja, their red crosses gleaming under the fresh August sun. We all walked as if underwater, slowly, treading through that thick sadness, a devastation so great we thought nothing worse would come. We were wrong. 2 years later, the island would be hit by a different type of storm, the American Depression. It would weave through our people like a sickness. Those who left the island in search of a better life would die without ever returning home. I was wrestling Doña Juta's pilon from the muck when I heard the screaming. The wooden mortar and pestle she used to crush her magic herbs was still in my hands. Witch woman, you brought this upon us. The townsfolk gathered around me, whispering, yes, yes. They went on. I heard Juta's voice call to Oya. They stammered as they danced around the goddess's name, and now Juta is dead. See, she bore the child in the temporal. Ha, that's no child, es un demonio, a demon child. Do us a favor and join Juta. The stones came soon after, and I ran deep into the mountains, alone, nothing but you and Juta's pilon held tightly against my chest. Over the years, Juta had always reminded me, nunca caminamos sola, mijita. The spirits of those we love never truly leave us. They walk alongside us, divided by the veil that separates the living from the dead. They are the flash in the corner of an eye, the knot in the deepest part of the belly that urges you on when you think you no longer can. And when it is our time, they are the voice that carries us over. It is your father, Tempestad, who urges me to tell you this story, though he is long gone now. He sits with us here in the manicomio, where the screams of the mad bounce off the walls and drown into the sea.